I might get up and just have a little stroll if that's okay with everyone. Just mix it up a little bit so you're not looking at the same thing all the time. So my name's Francesca Goodman-Smith. I work for a wonderful organisation that is across the whole of Australia looking at food waste. So today we're talking about food, which is something that each and every one of us have in our lives. It's one of our life forces that is so essential to everything that we do, yet we're wasting a third of that globally every year. And that equates to 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a huge, huge issue that we're trying to tackle globally and here in Australia. So to bring it back down to the Australian context, we've got some great data that shows that 7.6 million tonnes of food is wasted every year. That equates to filling the Melbourne Cricket Ground to the brim 9 times every year. It's a huge amount of food that is grown, moved through our supply chains, imported from overseas, and goes directly in the bin. And it costs our economy $36.6 billion. This is an astronomical amount of money that we're essentially throwing in the bin by not treating our food with the respect that it deserves. So as I mentioned, I work for an organisation called End Food Waste Australia. We've got 3 different programs that we run. We have an R&D division focused on developing research and evidence to help find the solutions to reducing food waste. We have an industry implementation program where we run the Australian Food Pact, and that is a voluntary agreement program that brings together businesses from all across Australia to work on setting targets for food waste, measuring their food waste, and implementing actions. And we're also going to be running a national food waste behaviour change campaign to bring every single consumer in Australia on that journey and empower them to take action against food waste. So I will focus a bit on the research side of things today as we're talking about the 4 or 10 R's of recycling. And I wanted to focus on a topic that is very dear to my heart. So I run the transformation program at End Food Waste Cooperative Research Centre. This is focused on turning food waste into new products. So essentially keeping food as food in our food system. This is known as upcycling. So this is where you take a resource and you turn it into something new. There we go. So a few examples that I'd like to show you of the research that we've undertaken so far and that we're carrying out at the moment across different parts of our food supply chain. So a project that's based right here in Queensland, a partnership between a food rescue organisation called FoodShare and the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries is looking at taking food that would otherwise go to waste, rescuing that, turning it into shelf-stable meals using really innovative technologies and creating meals for people who are in hard-to-reach places, remote parts of Queensland, and don't have proper access to good food. So that's keeping food out of landfills and out of being wasted, and that's delivering meals to people in need. Another exciting project we're working on is with some growers in Bundaberg. So they're a farm called Sunripe and they make cherry tomatoes. They realised that they were wasting significant amounts of these tomatoes every year. And so they're creating a suite of different value-added products out of those tomatoes. Another project that we're working on is with a company called Extractor. They make food as medicine products, so they're really utilising the full nutrition potential of our food resources. And we're working with them on different extraction techniques and processing techniques to use all of that food. An example of using all of that food as well for some really innovative things is these shoes that I'm wearing here are actually made out of grape marc. So they're made out of wine waste and turned into a textile material. Really exciting. So last year I had the amazing opportunity to undertake a Churchill Fellowship. So I travelled around the US and Europe looking at innovative solutions in the food upcycling space. One example I'd love to share with you, and we're back on the topic of beverages again, is with Anheuser-Busch, which is one of the biggest beer producing companies in the world. They realised they had such huge volumes of spent brewer's grain generated every year from their facilities, and they knew exactly how much spent grain was being produced because it was directly correlated with the amount of beer that they produce. So they set up a direct processing line from the factory and built a new facility to process that spent brewer's grain. They turn it into a protein isolate product which can be used in sports drinks, beverages, and plant-based products. So they invested a whopping $100 million in that infrastructure, but they are diverting millions of tonnes of food waste every year. Then I also looked at other companies who are creating food ingredients. So one of the really successful things that companies overseas are doing is partnering with other companies to get their products in supermarkets. So Renewal Mill, they create a flour out of tofu byproduct, and it's used in a cereal which is sold in supermarkets all over the US. Another really cool solution is upcycled food companies partnering with retailers to get their product incorporated into their private label product. So actually getting it into the own brand products in Kroger, for example. Another example I'd like to touch on is the power of the primary production sector and farmers to really utilise their surplus to get maximum potential and maximum value out of this. So I visited a growing facility in the Netherlands called Harvest House. They're one of the biggest growers in the Netherlands. They had a huge problem with rejection of tomatoes and peppers from the supermarkets, and so they decided to create their own processing facility on site where they prepare processed sort of puree products and other food ingredients. And they sell their own products, they donate these to food rescue initiatives, and they partner with retailers on private label product. So an example down there is Albert Heijn, which is a retailer in the Netherlands. They replaced the tomato puree in their burger patties to reduce the added water, and now 92% is meat and 8% is tomato. So it's a really positive news story for that retailer, and it's also keeping food waste out of landfill as well. So there's some fantastic examples of how to make the most of our food internationally and here in Australia. We've got over 100 partners that we're working with across the whole food supply chain. We still have $5 million of research funding that is unspent and ready for projects to enhance that innovation, to really look at extracting as much value as we can out of food and putting an end to food waste here in Australia.